Today we're going to take a look at mentoring and induction. And when we think about the word induction, we're referring to your first 3 years as a classroom teacher. So a couple of rationales for why you would want to have a mentor. Number one, high number of teachers who leave the profession in the first 3 years. So with each of these, or with some of these, there's a couple of questions that I do want to ask. The first question is, why would teachers want to leave in the first 3 years? And as it relates to that question, what's the importance of mentoring? If you think back, for those of you who are teachers or have been teachers in the public school, private school sector, think about those first couple of years. Your first year is very chaotic. There's a lot of time spent planning, learning procedures, learning protocols, learning about students. The mentoring role can be very beneficial during that time because not only are you achieving many highs, but you're also experiencing frustration as well. Two, alternative certification. And we'll talk more to that in just a minute. And then number three, teachers who re-enter the field after being out a number of years, regardless of what you're doing. If you're re-entering a certain field such as teaching, a mentor is going to be very, very helpful because there's so many things, so many day-to-day activities that you may not be familiar with, and you just need somebody to lean on, somebody who's going to be there to help support you during that time. Four, teaching out of their field of study. Again, when we say teaching out of, referring to my background may be in physical education, but I'm teaching a class in history. If that's the case, I may not be very familiar with the strategies that take place in those sort of classrooms. The physical education classrooms will be very different from many other classrooms across the school. And then five, varying demographics. So the question is, how can it be difficult? If you think about demographics, what impact is that going to have on why you should have a mentor during those first 3 years of teaching? And so when we look at alternative certification, it did begin in the mid-'80s, and it took off in the late 90s, and as we've seen in the early 2000s, alternative certification is becoming more and more common. As we think about alternative certification, one of the reasons that it's still very prominent in the school districts today is the fact that early research on alternative certification didn't find a significant difference between those who took this route compared to those who took a certification route. Now, the good thing is more research is being done today, especially with programs such as Teach for America, whose numbers and whose results are telling us otherwise. So it does lend itself to some great discussion on whether or not we believe alternative certification to be effective, to be non-effective. And I think it all depends on the individual person. A person who takes this route is probably going to have a lot more work. Someone who takes this route is probably going to have to have a learning curve. And I think the role of a mentor can be very beneficial for someone who's taking this route of certification. As we know, going through the certification route, teaching can be very difficult. So imagine what it would be like if you're going through an alternative certification if you're doing a field of study outside of what you had some experience with during your undergraduate program. But another reason why alternative certification has been sustained is because of the increase of the people, the increase of the states that are offering, but also the increase of numbers across the U.S. And so this chart gives us a good indication of how much more common alternative certification is today. Now you'll notice that this chart only goes up to 2008, 2009, and if the trend is consistent, those numbers continue to rise up until today. Case in point, if you look at our program here at the University of Memphis, we have two different routes that students can take. One, they can do the community PE route, which is where you graduate with a 4-year degree from the University of Memphis, but you are not certified to be a teacher. The other route is to go through the residency program and to become certified in physical education. The reason I bring that up is because we do have graduates of the community physical education program who in the following year will apply for teaching jobs, and some are awarded teaching jobs even in the city of Memphis. So another reason why these numbers continue to grow and have been able to sustain is because more and more school districts are hiring teachers through the alternative certification route. We look at this chart, and this chart gives us an indication of the number of individuals who are issued certificates to teach through alternate routes. And this, if you look at the state of Tennessee, records began back in 2000-2001 with a number of 611. And if you notice, in 2008-2009, almost 2,600 students. So in other words, that number from 2000 quadrupled in a period of 8 years. So it is becoming more and more common. Now, another thing to consider when we think about alternative certification is the difficulty of the test. When I was teaching in Oklahoma at Oklahoma State University, we had a chart that we shared with all of our students, and it gave the success rate for each subject area test of the praxis exams. Every test was 70% or above, which indicated that even though you may have no experience with other subject areas, the opportunity for you to take the test and pass the test and to become certified in that particular content area was very high. And there's a greater probability of that occurring. Many of our students at Oklahoma State took that route. Oklahoma was one of the first states to have that opportunity to become certified to teach in a certain subject area by only passing the praxis exam. So again, it lends itself to some great discussion. I believe that when we look at alternative certification, we can see some benefits of it, but we can also see some cons of the program as well. So what is the role of a mentor? If you think about alternative certification, the mentor is going to play a variety of roles, but the same holds true for someone who went through the certification process as well. But the mentor is going to serve the role of teaching, sponsoring, encouraging, counseling, and befriending. And as you would imagine, through each of these functions, you'll notice, or you should notice, that the relationship between the mentor and the mentee should become stronger over the course of the semester. But in order for that to occur, a variety of elements must exist. So when we look at the question, is there a conflict in store for the supervisor who tries to fulfill these roles? Yes, there could be some conflict. One of the things you have to consider as a mentor is if you do become a good friend of the mentee, be cautious of how you evaluate and how you support that teacher. I'll give you a case in point. I was very aware of one of our individual students who was teaching in North Mississippi. His teacher at the time and the principal were really good friends. Because of that, the principal never came and evaluated that teacher. He chose instead to fill out the evaluation papers and just turn it in to the teacher. So in that situation, you have to be careful, and you have to make sure that you don't cross any lines that would be considered unethical. And in that situation, selecting a different mentor would probably be beneficial for both teachers involved. So as a mentor, you want to fulfill these functions, but you also want to do it in a very professional manner. So we look at the work of mentors. How should mentors and proteges be selected? Using that previous example, consider these three elements. First of all, it must be willing. And when we say willing, not only willing to do the job, but also to do the job in a way that's beneficial for both parties. You want it to be a good fit. If it is not a good fit between you and your mentor, it may be very difficult for work to be accomplished. And number three, you want both sides to benefit. Okay, many times we look at this in a one-directional pattern. In other words, we believe the mentee is gaining all of the is gaining all the profit from the relationship. But think about the role of a mentor. If a mentor is working with someone who is straight out of college, think about all the ideas that they can learn in different ways of teaching in the classroom. As we say many times, as a physical education teacher, we are a community that relies on one another to gain good ideas in order to be effective in the classroom. We're not competing against one another, we're trying to help each other out. And so if we look at the article done by Sweeney in 2001, a couple things I want you to see in regards to this article. Leaders want mentors who model the excitement of learning, and leaders want beginning teachers who search for better and more effective ways of ensuring student success. This is an excellent combo. If you can find a a mentor who's going to model excitement, and you can find a mentee who wants to get better and is willing to learn, then you should have success with the relationship. So we look at induction teachers. We'll be hiring more than 2 million teachers in the next 5 years. The purpose, to ease a teacher's transition from student to professional. So in those first 3 years, we're trying to decrease the number of teachers who are opting out, and instead we want to by the end of that 3-year period, to instill a high level of confidence so that we can see even greater success in the classroom. First-year teachers are often unfocused workers, unable to think of ways to improve their teaching, highly motivated and coachable, and then idealistic with high expectations. And as a mentor, you never want to take away the excitement that a teacher has when they come into the profession. And so, looking at this list, as you scroll down and look at the different things that are listed here, a couple that I do want to point out. Number 2, let them make decisions. Give them autonomy with certain decisions. Number 3, remember when you're setting goals, baby steps. Don't strive too high in the beginning. Take the baby steps so you can experience success. Number 6, avoid pass fail. Encourage the communication, help them to feel non-threatened. Number 9, take the guessing game out. With school-wide standards for student behavior, help it to be consistent so that the teachers don't have to struggle with establishing that plan for themselves. And then number 10, any experience will help. Give them the opportunity to participate in school efforts with parental involvement, because as a teacher, we all know that our parents are going to be assisting us in a variety of ways.